Hi guys! Do you know those days when you just want to sew just a really simple quilt, but you don't just want to do like a simple square block? I have the no pattern, quick and easy quilt for you. I'm also going to make it even more quick and easier because I got this charm pack. Now a charm pack has 42 squares inside of it, so if you were to sew all of these 42 squares, you'd end up with some I think like a baby quilt out of it. It's like a crib quilt. Now, in order to make this a little bit different, this is what we're going to do. I have a metre of this fabric, a metre or a yard, here nor there. So I've got this metre of fabric, and what I'm going to do is cut this metre of fabric into 2-inch strips. Now, this can be as big or as small as you want it to be. So I'm going to show you what a block is going to look like. So I'm going to open this charm pack. Now the good thing about these charm packs is that you're going to get the full range of this fabric. And when I say a full range, you're going to have like a mixture of like whites, a mixture of greens, some more whites popping up here, and we've got some greys. This is a really nice set and it's super modern. There's pinks, there's teals, and there's like darks. So see here, this would be the white version of this print here, which is blue. So this here is going to be my first piece. So as you can see, one of my squares here is 5 inches. 5 inches this way, 5 inches that way. I now have one of my 2-inch strips and I'm going to cut it off at 5 inches. So it's going to match up with one of my squares. And I'm going to cut a second piece at 5 inches. So now I have two 5-inch by 2-inch. What we're going to do here is take it over to the sewing machine. With this it doesn't really matter, but if you are using something that has a pattern on the one side, like this has the pattern on the one side, you would put right sides facing together. So the right side of this needs to be facing the right side of that, and you were going to sew along here at 1/4 inch. Couple of things I want to point out here. So I have set my stitch length to a 3.0. I'm also going to turn on my pivot feature and I'll show you that in action a little bit later. I also like to put my 1/4 inch foot on with guide, and I also like to keep my needle in the down position. Whenever I'm quilting or doing any sewing project, I always have my needle stopped in the down position. This needle here is a 90 14 needle size. So what the pivot key actually does is I can just press on my presser foot and my machine will start sewing, and then I'll lift my foot off the presser foot and it automatically raises at the back here. I'm not having to go at the back of my machine and press it up and down all the time. It does it itself, hands-free sewing. So I'm just going to sew this all the way to the end here. So before I go to my iron, I'm going to place my next piece in place. So you're going to go right sides together, and we are going to sew this one up. So now we have this piece that looks like this. Now we are going to open it up. We're going to take it to our iron and we're going to press our seams down. If you have any bits of thread, you can just cut them off. Little tails here. Now you can press these seams one of two ways. So you could press it going to the darker side of the fabric, because you don't want to press it going towards the lighter side of the fabric because you're going to see this seam. So press it to the darker side of the fabric. Now with this one, I'm going to press my seam open, so you can just get your finger and just slightly finger press it just to help it along. And then you're going to get your iron and just press. So there are two ways here of pressing a seam. One way is to press it open, and another way is to press it to the darker side of your fabric. So this is what one block is going to look like. Now what you're going to do is you're going to get your second piece of square fabric. So remember when I said you get a full range of fabrics in a charm pack. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this upside down and I'm going to choose this back piece of fabric for my next square. Because if I start rooting around through here, I'm just going to start selecting, saying which one's my favourite and this, that and the other, and I just want to get it done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew this guy onto here like so, and we're just going to build this quilt. So like I said, it can be as big or as small as you want it to be. It could be like, you could cut smaller squares and make it a coaster. You could make it into a king size quilt. The world is your oyster. You can do whatever you like with this. Please go as fast or as slow as you would like to go. If there's no real dark side, don't worry about it, just press. And move on to your next section, which for me is going to be another 2" by 5" strip. And I'm going to continue on. This is as long as I need my section to be. All that I am going to say to you is always make sure that you end up with a section at the end like this. And on the other end, I have this, do you know, our little 2" by 5" sections. So you've got one at each end just to close off each square. You're going to take another piece of your strips, your 2" one, and you're going to open it out. You're going to line a strip like so, and you're going to attach it all the way along here. Just cut off the selvages at the end, you know, you're going to have these little dots there. We are just going to sew all the way down. And making sure everything is lined up there. And just stop and start and then continue sewing. I'm not going to be making a quilt from my project. I'm going to make something a little bit more unusual, but you're going to continue making this quilt as big or as small as you want it to be. It's very versatile, so just keep going with them strips and them squares for however wide or however tall or length you want it to be. You can have a bit of a tail here. You're just going to cut him off. Use a ruler if you want. Then you're just going to open that up. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for the bottom here. So here we go. This is what it's starting to look like. So if you're wondering now, okay Cassie, how am I going to get the second set of squares to line up with the first set of squares? No worries. If you just continue with exactly what I've done at the start, so you're just going to do your strip, your square, your strip and your square, everyone's going to match up perfectly. And anyway, if somebody points out that you're slightly off, you don't need that kind of energy in your life. You don't need that friend that's going to point out that that one square isn't quite lined up. Just get rid of them. They're not worth it. Now, if you follow me on any of my other social media platforms, my Facebook or my Instagram, you should know by now that I really hate working with patterns. So I'll basically just build my own kind of quilt blocks. So with my first row here, I now know how many of these strips to cut for my next row. So I've gone ahead and I've pre-cut them, and now I'm going to sew my next section. Here we go, and this is what we are starting to look like. And as you can see, no problem with the lining up of the squares. They are almost perfectly lined up. Okay, this one is slightly off, but I mean, who cares? Who really cares? It's an amazing looking quilt. Now, if you are bothered about your quilt top looking like perfectly lined up, I don't want you buying like really cheap plain fabrics like a broadcloth. When I first started quilting, I didn't understand the difference between a $3 piece of fabric to a $15 piece of fabric. Now there is a difference, and the difference is in the weave of the actual fabric. If you go and look at one of your cheaper stores and have a feel of the fabric, and then actually go to a quilting store and have a look at their fabrics, you'll notice that the weave is much thicker, hence producing a better looking quilt. Okay guys, I have not been paid to say this, but what I would recommend is because I was using the Moda Charm pack, I would recommend that you go with a Moda plain fabric, because the weave on both the materials is a good quality weave. It's quilting material, and you're going to have much better results using quilting fabric than you would if you used like a cheaper fabric from a cheaper store. So here we go guys, this is what mine looks like. This is the perfect size for what I need, and I'll give you the measurements to what this quilt actually is. So this one is just shy of 32 inches by another 32 inches. So we've made a perfect square. So if you want to be doing the projects that I'm going to be showing you next week, you want to go 5 across and 5 up, which makes a total of 25 squares. So we don't even use all of the charm pack. So if you want to make this into a quilt, just keep making it to as big, so as long or as wide as you need it to be. It's very forgiving, this quilt block. Just make it bigger. I'm not going to turn this into a quilt. I'm going to make a different project. So if you want to see what that is, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss watching me next week. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.